Hello, everybody. Welcome to our today's seminar, Migration to Oracle Multitenant. And I would like to guide you in the next 45 minutes through all the aspects of why and how you should migrate to Oracle Multitenant. So my name is Mike Dietrich. I'm the Distinguished Product Manager for Database Upgrades and Migrations at Oracle. And if you intend to follow me on Twitter, I promise I use Twitter solely for technical purposes. You won't see any statements about political opinions or whatever on Twitter from me. Mike Dietrich DE is my Twitter handle, and the DE is coming from the internal Oracle code for Deutschland, Germany. This is where I'm based. So I'm based in southern Germany, a little bit outside of Munich. The blog address, mikedietrich.de.com, gives you access to the slides. So if you intend to download the slides, please go to mikedietrich.de.com, tap on the slides button, and then webinar 2020, and you'll get access to these slides for today's session. Something to tell you up front is, if you intend to upgrade your database, the only recommended way to upgrade your Oracle databases is AutoUpgrade these days. And it's absolutely only recommended way. And nothing I say for marketing reasons. It's just a matter of fact that all big customers around the world use AutoUpgrade now to upgrade their databases. What you should take care on is you always need to download the newest version distributed via this Oracle support node. Because even if you have the most recent release update patch bundle applied to your environment, the one we offer via download from MOS is typically much newer, because for the release update, we have a code freeze, and every 6 to 8 weeks, we release a newer version. And so you may get a much newer version via this node. When you scroll down to the end, you find a change log, and it tells you what has been fixed or added as features to this release of AutoUpgrade. Now, AutoUpgrade and the relation to multi-tenant. And before I show you how you can leverage AutoUpgrade to migrate to multi-tenant, I need to show you this here first. Because a long while ago, we had this sentence in the upgrade guide. Actually, Roy and myself, we were in Japan in a workshop, and accidentally, one of us found this sentence in the upgrade guide saying the non-CDB architecture is deprecated. That means we don't develop it further. And it may be desupported and unavailable in a release after 12.2. So after 12.2 here means after 19, because as you may be aware, 12.2.1, 18, and 19 all belong to the 12.2 release family. So first of all, relax, nothing changes with Oracle 19. You still have all the choices available, but after 19, this will change. The important thing with Oracle 19 is that in order to make this move a bit more attractive for you, we allow you to have free user-created PDBs without purchasing an extra license. And free user-created PDBs means the PDB $seed does not count here. And as you can see, this is taken from the licensing guide. Also, Standard Edition 2 allows you to have free user-created PDBs. If you do that, just make sure you set max_PDBs equals free in all your SP files to avoid any accidental license violation. Why am I talking about 19C today? 19C is currently available. There's no other newer release available except for 20C as the preview release in the cloud, but the 20C documentation is available. And when you go into the upgrade guide for 20C, you'll find this sentence here: multi-tenant upgrades only in 20C. So from Oracle Database 20C or forward on, there is no non-CDB architecture anymore. So as I said before, 19C gives you the choice. From 20C on, you all will have to migrate to the multi-tenant architecture. And this is why I personally think it's a great idea to start now with 19. If you don't do it with all your entire database estate, no worries, but identify a few databases. You migrate to multi-tenant to make sure all your scripts work well, your backup procedures, your recovery procedures work, your monitoring works. And then once you move forward to a new release, and there will be an auto-upgrade session in this series for the APEC OUG as well, so I happily invite you to that as well. Then I talk more about release strategy and release management. But if you go forward, you have all the experience already. Now, what does AutoUpgrade do for you? So we have this database estate. It must be at minimum 11.204. So everything 11.204 or newer AutoUpgrade can upgrade. And then you download a tool. The tool is small, just 2 megabytes in size. And the only work you do right now is you create a sample config file and you edit that. And that sample config file can take care of all your databases, whether it's just 5 or 550, doesn't matter. It advises AutoUpgrade which SID to take care on, what to do with this database, special functions, special procedures like create a guaranteed restore point by default or don't do it, skip the time zone upgrade, execute a shell script, change this init Aura parameter. All this is settled in a simple config file. If we sit together, it takes me 5 minutes to get you into, and then you hit the button and you run your first AutoUpgrade. The learning curve is very, very quick, and it's still very powerful. So what it does is upgrades your databases, ideally to 19C. This is the long-term support release, but it could also upgrade to 18.5 or newer, or to 12.201 with the January 2019 release update or newer. The secret here is why I show you this in multi-tenant. AutoUpgrade can plug in as well afterwards. So you can do a one command orchestration, upgrade and plug in one pass. And it's no black box, no worries. You have the job console. This is your control interface to monitor, to stop it, to resume it, or to abort it, restore, whatever. But we write also a lot of log information in the background. So the tool is completely transparent. You don't have to look at the logs, but if you need to find out what it's doing, we tell you everything. So one command orchestration is the keyword here. We upgrade and then we plug in. The only thing you need to do is this CDB in the middle of my slide, this container database, you have to create that. AutoUpgrade doesn't do this for you. You create this and you tell AutoUpgrade to plug your database into that and then run in the last step, the conversion script. So for that purpose, we have tweaked or added parameters to the config file, but AutoUpgrade can do even more. And this is a secret. It's not a real secret because it's on my upgrade blog already, but it's not really in the documentation pointed out yet, as far as I know. Even if you have upgraded to 19C and you intend to move to a PDB, you can advise AutoUpgrade doing that. So what you do, this is the config file, and the source and the target home, you see it's identical here. And you say target CDB, this is the CDB you would like to plug in, and you can even rename your database, your non-CDB, to a new PDB name. And then AutoUpgrade doesn't upgrade your database because we assume it's upgraded already if you do this here, but it plugs in for you. So you don't even have to do this step, and you can monitor the progress, which is absolutely helpful if you do this in a broader scale with many databases at the same time. So instead of writing scripts or typing a lot, AutoUpgrade does this for you if you need to. If you want to dig more into that, I have put up a YouTube video a while ago, and the YouTube video in the info screen has some sort of content or indexing. So if you followed my AutoUpgrade presentation, you don't have to go through the first 6-7 minutes about where I tell how AutoUpgrade works and blah, blah, blah. You just can go straight into the technical demo and look how AutoUpgrade upgrades and how it plugs in afterwards. So for this purpose, AutoUpgrade has this target CDB parameter. So you create a CDB and then you tell AutoUpgrade plug in this database. And if you have like 20 databases in your AutoUpgrade config file, you can all plug them into the same CDB or also into different CDBs if you need to. Then you specify the target PDB name if you would like to rename it. If it should keep its name, you leave it like it is. And by default, we use no copy, meaning we leave the files in place. If you don't want that, because you would like to be able to flip back as quickly as possible and not restore, then you can use this target PDB copy option, and we create a copy on the desired either file system or in the desired disk group. Now Oracle Multitenant. This is a feature we introduced with 12.101, and even in 19C. You have the full choice. Left side, as before, non-CDB architecture. Middle pillar, free tenants, free PDBs, user-created PDBs by you. The gray PDB $seed does not count here. This is available without extra license purchase for Standard 2 and for Enterprise Edition. Just make sure you set max PDBs free in your init or RSP file to avoid accidental license violation. Right side of the slide, multi-tenant license required only with Enterprise Edition. Then you can have up to 252 PDBs, or on engineered systems and in the cloud more than 4,000, which I think is a theoretical limit. I would recommend you 50 maximum in production, 150 in test and dev. Don't over pull the trigger here. That's manageable. As soon as it's become too much or too many, I wouldn't recommend that. This is based on customer experience. It's not my personal opinion, actually. Now, the concept of multi-tenant allows you to create here in the red one simply a new PDB. And this is the reason why the PDB $seed is there. When we provision a new PDB, it gets cloned from the seed and a few things get added. But you can also take a non-CDB and make it a PDB and plug it in. And once you have that concept, you can also do remote clones, not only local clones, or you can unplug and plug into a different one, or clone over here, another remote clone. So we have a lot of flexibility, which I think is one of the big strengths of the concept. If the developer needs something, you give them within minutes or half an hour, or whatever, how big your PDB is, a new system to play with and test certain stuff. So please, this is the feature, the concept behind Oracle Multitenant, and the different CDBs can also be different patch levels or even different versions. Now, the idea behind multi-tenant, I think this slide has been overstretched a lot already, but let me just briefly repeat the idea. It's virtualization on the database layer. So we have a container database, the CDB, and we run here free PDBs. But on the OS side, you don't see anything about the PDBs. You see only the CDB, because the CDB allocates the shared memory segment. The SGA is shared over all the resources, also the background processes, control files, reader logs, flashback logs, and ESP file. Your applications on the left side of the slide connect via service names, ideally, into the PDBs. So connecting, when you connect /sysdba, the typical connect when you administer, this brings you always in the CDB root per default. When you want to connect now to your PDB, and you would like to do this with a user or with sys, then you have to specify this longer string here in quotation marks, or the easy connect, which is so easy that I never can remember it. So I have to put it on the slide. There's also a workaround with the toTask variable, but I'm not a fan. I would prepare the key store. toTask is quite of a hacky workaround. Don't use that. I just have it on the slide for completeness in case you find it somewhere else. When you want to switch between two containers, let's say you're on the root container and you would like to go to your PDB, you say all the sessions at container PDB1 and go back to the root container, all the sessions at container CDB $root. Now there's a new workaround since Oracle 18.5. You can connect directly on the OS side into a PDB when you say export Oracle PDB SID. This environment variable allows you now to connect with SQL plus /sysdba without username, without password, only this, no quotation marks, directly into the PDB. And I would like to show you this in a very brief demo. So I say export Oracle PDB SID equals, and here my PDB is called PDB FTX. Now I connect /sysdba and magic. Let's do a show con name. I'm in PDB FTX and this is the PDB. This sounds extremely like sweet to use that, but be very aware here. This is a, I would say, a half-baked solution right now, because internally it's realized via a trigger. So when this environment variable is set and you connect, then the trigger brings you directly into the PDB by doing all the session set container PDB FTX. But if you mistype, or if you specify a PDB name which doesn't even exist, it still connects you without telling you anything. And this is the danger here. Happened to me already in one of my labs where I played around. I accidentally was in my root container because the SQL Plus / sysdba will succeed for sure. But if you misconfigured or mistyped the Oracle PDB SID, it will bring you in the root container without telling you, because the trigger doing that does not have any error handling. And a trigger can't give you a warning at the command line and output telling you, hey, sorry, you are in the wrong, or you are now in the CDB $root. It doesn't do that. So without notice, it connects you still, but to the wrong container. Be very aware of that. Then with the beginning of multi-tenant, the multi-tenant team has made it mandatory to have all components in a database. This didn't resonate so well with customers. So after a while, it was allowed now to have less components and decide by yourself. Be aware that only if you hit in DBCA advanced configuration and custom database, this is the only way to get access to this screen, where you can choose the options. And now with this screen here, you'll see that I have done a lot of clicks on the very left side, select the components, but none click for including PDBs. This means if I have not a single component clicked here, my root container will have all of them marked here, but my PDB $seed won't have any of them. So whenever I provision a new PDB, it will have only the Oracle server and the XDB and RUG component if it's RUG on, if it's not RUG option off. But everything else is not there. Only if I click here, including PDBs, it will be included in the seed as well. Very important, the last one here, so be aware of that. The last one here, Apex, be really, really aware. Apex should never be in the root container. And Apex is the only component here you can unclick on the left side and click in for including PDBs. Apex should always be only in PDBs, because then you can safely unplug and plug in without issues. You can even mix Apex versions in different PDBs. But if Apex is in the root container, it gives you a lot of trouble as soon as you start unplugging and plugging in, especially if the receiving CDB has no Apex component in the root container, then you are basically lost. So be aware of that. And if you want to rip out components for whatever reason, this is documented mostly on my upgrade blog, and some MOS nodes over time got created as well. Then catcon.pl. This is I would call it the vehicle you need to learn to deal with, because catcon.pl at the beginning is a bit hard to handle, but after a while you realize how powerful it is. I would like to show you an example. I would like to execute a script pre-upgrade fixup.sql. This is something the pre-upgrade char script creates. For instance, it empties the recycle bin. Now, I don't want to log into my 50 PDBs, and to the PDB $seed, I officially can't log in to run that. So what do? I use catcon.pl. So catcon.pl now will execute this in all my containers, including root, seed, and all PDBs. But what do I need to do? I need to call Perl, because it's a Perl script. And Perl by default is not in your Oracle path. Use the Oracle Perl. And then I need to call catcon.pl. It's also not in the Oracle path. It's in your RDBMS admin directory, because it's not an executable. So you have to call it directly with the entire path. And you have to specify some parameters. The second and the fourth parameter here are mandatory. -D for directory is the directory where the script I would like to execute, pre-upgrades, fix-ups, is located on my disk. And the fourth one, -B for base name. This is the base name for the log files. And please don't ask me why this is not chosen by the tool itself. You have to specify that. The -N1 is undocumented, but tells you use only one worker and create only one log file. The log file's name then will be preopfix0.log. And I recommend you strongly that you use always -L for log, because otherwise the logs will be put into your current working directory or into RDBMS admin, which either one is not a good idea. And all this to run pre-upgrade fix-ups, but then it will execute it in all the containers automatically. So it's powerful, but the scripting adjustment will cost you a little bit of work. And then when you look at our own scripts, you will find a hack in all our scripts, which is called _Oracle script. So when you go to RTM's admin, you will always see an alter session set Oracle script true. This allows us to execute database-related things, database-related scripts in the PDB $seed as well. You should keep your fingers away from that environment variable, because I show you an example here. Alter session set Oracle script true. Then I create a table, but not for this. I create it for the user Hugo. And you see what happens with the Oracle maintained column. It goes to yes. So this is now created as an Oracle maintained object, which is not the case. Be really alerted if you did that, because in our next database upgrade, we may check if an object is Oracle maintained and do certain actions to these objects. We did this, for instance, in the past to auditing objects quite often, or also to statistics objects. So be very, very aware. Don't use this as a workaround for yourself. But there are a few situations where you are allowed to change something in the PDB $seed, and then you need this Oracle script, because this allows you also to open the PDB $seed in a read-write fashion, maybe change the password protection profile, and then put the seed into read-only mode. And when you provision a new PDB, it has done these changes. A few things are mentioned here in this Moss note. Now, when we create a PDB, the easiest way is to say create pluggable database, PDB1. You need to specify an admin user, ADM here with a password. We need this admin user because when we create this PDB, it has no user in the seed. And for this purpose, we need this admin user. You can delete that admin user later. For instance, SAP does that. And then file name convert. I convert only the pattern, which is different here because both sit in the same tree in my home directory. There's a tip. You don't need to specify the entire convert path like /data, /cdb1, /pdb seed, only the difference in the same pattern matching algorithm needs to be specified, and this works as well. The cool thing here is this PDB is almost ready to use. So once you start it up, it's there. You can fill it with data, no scripts to be run. And this is another cool thing with the multi-tenant concept. Now you can also clone locally. So I create on the left side a PDB2 as a clone from PDB1. And again, I use this file name convert if I'm in file system. I can even specify parallel 8 or parallel 16 if I have a lot of CPU power. By default, we use the CPU count. Or if you want to reduce the CPU power, you can reduce the parallel degree, and you can monitor it via the VSession longops. Remote cloning requires that from the CDB2, the black one, we have a database link into CDB1. And then I can call create pluggable database PDB1. From PDB1, add database link. And if I'm a file system again, I convert just the CDB parts, and then everything will be created automatically in the background. With Oracle 12.2 onwards, all this works now online. You don't have to take down your database anymore, your PDB, or bring it into read-only mode for that. And the reason why it works online is we have local undo now, and this allows us to sync the final piece. I show you what we do when we do hot cloning. So when we start cloning the PDB on the left side into the right side, the process starts reading and writing, and until this stage, everything is good. But the further we go now with reading and writing, the more dirty blocks we get behind. Things we copied already are changed now. And the more forward we go, the more of these dirty reads or dirty blocks we get, and they will be all marked into the reader log, so we get transactions into the reader log filled up, and all these blocks need to be cleared out now in order to make this a correct clone, a consistent clone especially. So how do we do this? Once this operation is done, we ship the redo information also via this database link, and then we use the information from redo as if it would be just a recovery or a physical standby and apply this to our clone. And the final thing is we need to apply undo to roll back now uncommitted transactions. And that's it. And this works very well, and no worries for you. It's only the command I showed you on the slide before. You don't have to care on all this. I just show you that because it's good to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Now, when we upgrade in plugin, first of all, you could also plug in first and then upgrade. But for a big reason, we recommend this approach with 19C because we have a fallback for the upgrade part. You upgrade to the matching version. So you have a CDB here on the slide, CDB1, which is 19.8, and I upgrade my database at first to 19.8. Then I start it in read-only, and I create this XML manifest file. DBMS PDB describe. When I have this XML manifest, it basically describes the physical layout and SCNs for my database. Then I can shut it down and log into my CDB1. And on the CDB1, I plug in now with this XML file. So I say create pluggable database. I can give it a new name if needed using this XML file. No copy if the files should be in place. Have a good backup if you do this. And I think since 12.2.18, we don't have to say temp file reuse anymore, but it doesn't harm. Now, this is not the end of the story. Now it's only plugged in. That went fast. But the thing which takes more time is the sanity script, non-CDB to PDB. This, by the way, all is done by AutoUpgrade for you, as I explained before. This non-CDB to PDB script is a sanity script which now changes things in our previous non-CDB, now a PDB, deep down in its dictionary. A lot of things will be ripped away from the dictionary, removed, and exchanged with metadata links, but not everything. Because our root container has like the super dictionary, and our PDB has only still a dictionary, but not a complete one anymore. This script is irreversible. When you start it, there's no PDB to non-CDB script available. It runs only once in the life of a database. So never again anymore, because it was a non-CDB, now it's a PDB. Since 12.2, you can rerun it in case of failure. And the runtime depends a lot on how many objects you have in your dictionary. For instance, in Oracle EBS environments, we have seen runtimes with 19C around 3 to 4 hours. Be aware, this is downtime, okay? Another option I would like to show you here, in case you go now cross-platform and cross-NDNS, is full transportable export import. And the reason why I show you that is because it makes it really easy to move. And you don't have to do an extra upgrade. So whereas in the previous example, I upgraded my red non-CDB first to 19.8, this could be still an 11.203 or 11.204. So what I do is I create a fresh PDB. And ideally, this makes it even easier. It doesn't have to be, but makes it easier. A database link going from my new PDB into the source database. Then I set my table spaces read-only, or if downtime matters and my database is really big, I can deal also with ARM and incremental backups here. I copy my files then, or restore incremental backups, and then I start data pump from the CDB side and pull everything over this database link. This is the code here. And if I deal with an 11.203 or 11.204 source, I have to say version 12. If the source is at least 12.1, forget about a version 12. You don't need that. Full, yes. Transportable, always. These two commands trigger a full transportable export import. And then data pump will now pull over the table space meta information. It will plug in the table spaces, make them read-write, create a users, change everything needed, add the roles, the triggers, the constraints, the sequences, everything will be handled by data pump. So it's a combination of transportable table spaces, transportable table spaces as the base technique, if you need to, with ARM and incremental backups to decrease the downtime, and data pump handling all the manual steps for you. Now, another strength of multi-tenant is upgrades, because you can do on the left side of the slide everything at once. So my CDB1, I started in a new home and I do a database upgrade, and ideally I let this done by AutoUpgrade. So AutoUpgrade does this stop, start, and upgrading for me. And then the root container will always upgrade it first. and then the PDBs in groups and parallel, and how many I can upgrade in parallel depends on the CPU power I have on the system. Whereas on the right side of the slide, I just unplug and plug one PDB and upgrade it, or it can be 2 or 16 PDBs. There's no limit, but the benefit of that solution, of the right one, is more control. I can decide this application has no downtime. I take the PDB, move it over, and I have only this single upgrade running on each PDB where I can decide. So more control on the right side, less work for you on the left side. Then, regardless if you do multi-tenant or not, you will find a new class of views in every 12 database. And in 19C is over 1,000 views, all starting with CDB underscore. So it's like the super dictionary views, and they have one thing, all of them in common, and this is a column called con underscore ID, the container ID. So in a non-multi-tenant environment, the container ID is always 0. That means for you, there's no distinction to which container an object belongs. But as soon as you do multi-tenant, you have con ID 1 for, hey, I belong to the root, con ID 2, which is only visible if you set this underscore exclude CDB view false, because otherwise con ID 2 objects will be excluded by default from the CDB views, which I personally think is a completely crazy and useless idea. I set this always to false, this parameter, because I want to see all my seeds objects everywhere. We had issues with customers when they patched databases and something went wrong in the seed and their check scripts couldn't figure it out. And then 3 to N for the container ID of a PDB. And when you look at the views like CDB CDB underscore SQL set or CDB underscore role prefs, and I marked it here in blue, every of these views has one column called con ID. Since 12.2, you can also mix character sets, which I think it's very important for us in Europe. It's certainly also very important in Asian countries. The only rule you have to follow, the root container must be AL32 UTF-8. And be aware, if the root container is AL32 UTF-8, all your future PDBs you provision will be AL32 UTF-8 as well. But once the root container is AL32, you can plug in all non-CDBs regardless of which character set they have. So you can mix character sets. Another thing to be really aware of is the silent compatible change. Because as soon as you play with a bigger environment and you unplug and plug, make it a rule that your compatible parameter has 3 digits, 1900 or 3 numbers, never 1910 and never 1980 because you applied 19.8 right now. Never. There's not a single feature in Oracle so far which requires compatible to be changed. Not even in memory required compatible 12.102. It worked with 12.10 perfectly well when you had a 12.102 database. So 3 numbers, never more, and make them unique and identical on all your CDBs. Because, look at my example, I unplug my PDB from a CDB where compatible is 12.10, and I plug it into this one where compatible is 19.00, it gets a silent compatible change. You see it only in the alert log. Problem is, if I would like to go back, for whatever reason, I can't, because you can't go to a lower compatibility environment. That does not work. So be very aware of that. Big pitfall. And a reason to have it this way and have my new CDB also with compatible 12.10 is, for instance, the downgrade. Because if I would plug out and plug in and both have the same compatible level and I upgrade it, compatible stays. We don't touch compatible during a database upgrade. We leave it as it is. But now I can run the downgrade script with cut downgrade, then unplug my PDB and plug it back in and then run cut reload. So I have a very good downgrade possibility and very fast one, efficient one actually. But compatible must not be changed. So be really aware of that. Okay, this was the intro into multi-tenant. And now I would like to show you some thoughts about how to migrate and also how to fall back if necessary. So high-level overview at first. Two approaches. First of all, upgrade to the matching version is one option and then plug in as I showed you. Or second option, I showed it with full transportable export import, migrate directly into the PDB, no upgrade necessary, and you're bound to less options. For instance, for upgrade, minimum is 11.204. For a migration, with full transportable, you can do it from an 11.203 as well. With data pump, you can even tackle a 10.105 database. Every approach requires sometimes, unfortunately, significant downtime. You can reduce this with Golden Gate if necessary. And for me, this is I would say sometimes a little bit hard to digest. The proven fallback strategies we invested a lot of time for database upgrades don't work here anymore. Once you're in multi-tenant, you can't downgrade to a non-multi-tenant environment. You can use data pump to go back, and you can use Golden Gate on top. So I would like to show you these things. Before that, I would like to guide you through the important parts of how to plug in and take care. And because of like various pitfalls there, the most often happening one is a mismatch in components. I really blogged a lot about that. So if you go into this topic, please go to the Upgrade blog. I wrote numerous blog posts about how to do it, what's the best workaround, what the pitfalls are, from time zone to components to patch or compatible and so on. So be aware of that. Patch levels matter as well. As I said, non-CDB to PDB requires downtime, and be also aware that some features may work a bit different. For instance, auditing or now AWR in a PDB if you turn it on, or also the standby implementation, especially in ASM, and I would like to show you this later on. Your best friend will become PDB plugin violations, the view which doesn't follow Oracle naming conventions. This view is super important because even when you run a compatibility check at first before you plug in, so you create your XML file and then you connect to your CDB and you trigger a PDB plug compatibility check with this XML file, this view gets populated. When you have errors, like here on my slide, it's not always obvious what it means, but I blogged really a lot about that. Database option cut Java mismatch. Okay, PDB installed, version 19.00. So my PDB has cut Java. CDB installed version null. It doesn't have it. So the PDB has more options than the CDB. I can't plug in. An error must be solved. Otherwise, you can't open your PDB unrestricted. Whereas there may be also a lot of warnings inside, and a lot of the warnings don't mean anything. Like your PDB has a SGA target of 1 gig and a CDB has a SGA target of 20 gig. Yes. It's often not really useful. What really makes me a bit worrying when you use this on a broader scale, and some of my customers do that, there's only a purge option available since 18C, and that purge option purges only resolved entries. So if you had a warning about a SGA mismatch 2 years ago when you plugged in, that stays still in this view, which is a bit odd. You can migrate with any technique. Data pump, transportable table spaces, full transportable export import, O2O, triple O, whatever Oracle offers. And so you create a PDB first and then you migrate. When you use data pump, standard approach and typically the easiest one, you create a dump file. After you created a PDB, or you do this in parallel, you copy your dump file over, you import. No rocket science. You can also go over the network link also for data pump. So you create a network link from your PDB into the source, and then you run impdp on the network link. So you pull everything over, no dump file is written. This is typically faster when you would have to go for different SANs. So the source database has a different SAN than the destination database, and you need a file to be copied somewhere else. Then this is faster. If you don't need to copy around a file, my experience is that traditional data pump export into a file and then importing from it is faster because you lack some parallelism over the network link. Data pump would also serve very well as a fallback. In this case, you have to export on the right side, but in export, as I'm going back into 11.204, as I versions equal 11.204. So the export dump will be created in 11.204 format, and then we import. And as I showed you before, the upgrade and then plugin and then non-CDB to PDB, that's all set. The fallback would be for the upgrade. We flash back to the guaranteed restore point. AutoUpgrade has this by default, or we would downgrade if you need to. But the struggle you may see is once you move to step 2, you have to go through step 3 as well. And if you want to go back now, you can basically just export import and go back into your source. And if you need minimal downtime, you can put Oracle Golden Gate on top. There may be another alternative, but this doesn't bring you back into non-CDB. At least it brings you back in the same version, but already in CDB PDB. So you auto-upgrade, but make sure compatible. In my example here, 12.1 stays 12.1. We do this. Auto-upgrade or upgrade doesn't touch compatible unless you advise it. Then you plug in, and now it's important. This black CDB has been created as a 99, but intentionally with compatible 12.1.0. So if you use the DBCA, make sure when you have the init Aura parameters, you go in and you change compatible. Then you run non-CDB to PDB, compatible still stays. And if you had created now in your 12.1 environment, the environment you came from, or 12.2 environment, if you came from that, this yellow CDB, it has compatible, in my example, 12.1.0. Now I can really use the downgrade option. So because compatible is 12.1, I run cut downgrade in my turquoise colored PDB. Then I unplug it, plug it into a yellow CDB, and then I run cut reload. And then I'm back in the same version, but not in a non-CDB architecture. I'll leave it to you if you accept this as a fallback alternative. So fallback for upgrades, move to multi-tenant is always a migration. That's why I call it a migration. It's not an upgrade, it's more than that. And so the usual fallback techniques don't exist. No downgrade, no flashback to a GRP, only for the upgrade exists. Your possible fallback options, data pump export import, Golden Gate on top, or if you accept this as alternative, the unplug back into the source version, but now you are still a PDB and you will stay there. Finally, I would like to show you a typical example from the real world when you would like to migrate to multi-tenant, but with a distant physical standby in place. And this is something a lot of you will see over time, because the more databases you migrate, the more important they get, and the more often you have physical standbys around. So in this example, this is from a banking customer, a future Oracle reference customer from Switzerland. And we have a 10 terabyte database on 12.1.2, in this case, in this special case, on Intel Solaris. And we have 100 kilometer distance, the standby, and the standby operates in maximum protection mode because it's a banking system. So for those of you who are not so familiar with data guard and maximum protection, that means if I write a commit on the red side, the commit sails over the network to the standby, will be written in the standby, and has to be now getting back and acknowledge to the red side that the commit has been written. And only then the next commit can come in, is allowed to come in. This ensures that all are absolutely in sync, absolutely zero data loss, even in the case of the worst disaster. What we can tolerate is, we would easily plug in the red one now, make it a PDB, but we don't want to rebuild a standby then. Because if we would go now, just plug in a PDB and then at the end, make it a standby, we would need to ship 10 terabytes over 100 kilometer distance, and we need to wait until the standby is in sync and first of all build up and then in sync, which may take a day or even longer. So this is not an option. When we plug in, so we upgrade and plug in the red one, this activity needs to be replicated to the standby. This is our idea. So at first, we disable the broker and I defer the lock transport. We stop the application, everything. Production will be upgraded now to 19C, 19.8, 19.9, or whatever. And once this is completed in a production, I enable the lock transport. I start my standby in the same home as the production is now. And then redo gets applied. The redo has all the upgrade information. I don't run an upgrade on a physical standby. It simply gets upgraded by applying the redo from the upgrade from production. That is standard. So far, this has nothing to do with multi-tenant. But now we would like to plug in the database now. So I create a new CDB. And for this CDB, I create its standby. So I do an Armin duplicate, let Armin create a standby. Standby right now works only on the level of CDBs, not on PDB by PDB. CDB with all its PDBs. You can exclude PDBs, don't do this. It's not a cool idea. In addition, to make actions like plug in or clone happen on the standby as well, I need parameters like the standby PDB source file DB link, and another one which is on the slides if you download them, because then a plugin option on the left side will be replicated to the right side. Otherwise, I would need to copy the files over, which I don't want to have here. So what do? I create my manifest file, database is in read-only, manifest file. And now, as I'm in ASM here, and by the way, I forgot to tell you, we are not on Intel Solaris anymore. With the upgrade, we moved already to Linux here. Intel Solaris and Linux are code compatible, file compatible since 11.2. So now I plug in. And before I can plug in, I need to create an ASM alias file. So this ASM alias file has now all the file paths and a matching table. We need this on the standby because as ASM files are OMF files. Otherwise, if I would plug in on the other side without this alias file, it would search for the exact files on production, which does not work because they are differently named. In file system, this is not an option or not a problem because my system01 DBF is named system01 DBF on the standby as well, but not in ASM with OMF. So every time you have OMF, you need this extra alias list file. I execute this now on the standby in ASM, and then I can go forward and plug in. And this is the situation where later on this will be found on the standby as well. Once this is plugged in, I run now non-CDB to PDB, runtime varies as I explained. And then it's now a complete pluggable database. Everything it's adopted. I replicate the same action on the standby side just by redo apply. So I turn on the redo apply and then it will happen on the standby side as well. So this is the way to go with. And this extra step is really necessary for OMF and in ASM. And this is why I wanted to show you that. Mission accomplished. And in the slides, you find, first of all, a very good blog post from my dear friend, Peter van Poimbroek. He's the Data Guard product manager at Oracle. And when I tackle with him here and ask him for help, he set this up over the weekend and wrote an excellent blog post to showcase how it works. And this MAA note here has also the script to generate the ASM alias list and describes the entire process step by step as well for you. Finally, for me, the most underrated feature in multi-tenant, and I love this feature, and you should give it a try because it's so super cool, refreshable PDBs. Not only for upgrade testing, but this is how I came across it. So I have a 12.2.1 CDB, and I create a new CDB in a new environment. And now I create a clone. I can clone into a new environment. This is possible. It will end up as a 12.2.1 because the PDBs are 12.2.1. Normally, I would upgrade it, but I don't use it at this point. I clone it as a refreshable clone. And this allows me to refresh it afterwards. So let's say this is a 10 terabyte PDB and the cloning operation would take, let's say 4 hours. Once it's done, I would be like 4 hours hanging back. This is not cool. I refresh it now And the refresh takes 5 minutes. And I can refresh it again. And I can refresh it again and again. So I determine the synchronization point and I avoid the involved downtime for this copy operation. Now I can upgrade it. So at this point, I would stop my application on production, upgrade it, but this is then only the PDB upgrade. And I have still my old system sitting there. Or you can do this for developer testing or whatever. And of course, you can do this also for the live upgrade. So I introduced this for myself for testing because I test a lot, but there's no restriction in that. So you can use this also for your production upgrades. Of course you can. So go to the blog. You determine the synchronization point. I think it's the most underestimated, underrated feature in multi-tenant. It's super cool. It's extremely powerful, more powerful than anything else there, and it helps you a lot in your daily work. And this is also one of the main reasons why I tell you, try it out with 19C. Free PDBs, no extra license, and features like that. You will love it. Your developers will love that too, believe me. Summary, every migration is an architectural change. You shouldn't underestimate it. It's work, it's testing environment work. Every migration requires downtime. If you need to reduce your downtime, deal with incremental backups. That can drastically reduce the downtime for the migration in case you have larger databases. And Golden Gate can decrease the downtime on top. Please remember, Golden Gate in the cloud marketplace feature is still available for free. So pretty cool feature there if you need to. On the blog, you find a long blog post series. It starts off with database migration from non-CDB to PDB overview. And then I show you all the different techniques. The first one, upgrade, plug and convert. This is what I favor because it gives us more fallback. You can also plug and upgrade convert, or you can clone, which I don't like at all, because if anything goes wrong, I had this at a customer with an 18 terabyte database and they couldn't open it and they repeated the clone operation again. So they wasted a full week of work until a problem was discovered and they had to fix something in the source. And then I summarized all the various pitfalls I see right now on the blog. So it's a little bit to read, but I hope it helps you avoiding any pitfalls, because the goal is that you can move to multi-tenant seamless without any big roadblocks or whatever, and just enjoy the feature. And let me finalize this here with a quote from Alain Fourer. He's the head of IT databases from Mobiliar Insurance in Switzerland. Mobiliar is consolidated since 1st of October 2019 with over 2,100 PDBs, completely, not a single non-CDB anymore. This is a super cool customer. And Alain said, we migrated 735 databases to 19C, and the task was mostly relatively relaxed. We started the AutoUpgrade tool. We monitor the progress from time to time, and there's no need to sit in front of your television or your monitor and just watch it and babysit it. You just monitor at the end, and that's it. And they upgraded in December 5 PDBs with altogether 705 CDBs, with altogether 735 PDBs, almost flawless. You find everything in our big slide deck if you are interested in more details, and they have their own blog if you need to read about it. So that's it from my side for today. So finally, let me direct you to the upgrade blog in case you want access to the slides. And let me tell you that there will be 2 other sessions, one about patching and the other one about AutoUpgrade. And I would like to thank the organizers for the APEC OUG. It's, oh my God, it blows you away, the agenda. It's super cool. And I feel gifted and honored to be part of that and to be allowed to present here. So thanks to Francisco and all the others who organized this. You do an awesome job. So happy migrations to multi-tenant. Thank you and goodbye.